By all accounts, AMD's new Ryzen 5th generation CPUs are a smash hit. If you can find one, which like every launch in 2020 is pretty difficult to do, they can crush Intel CPUs even in 1080p gaming numbers and power through their last gen counterparts as well. But do they actually hold up that well? Is it worth spending the extra money over a last gen 3900 or 3900 XT? And if you have something like a 3900 XT, is it worth upgrading? Well, let's benchmark them and find out. But first, a message from this video's sponsor, ASRock. Their new X570 Phantom Gaming Velocity board offers support for AMD's new Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, superior VRM design with 14 phases using 50A DoctorMOS drivers, PCI Gen 4 support through both its M.2 and both its reinforced X16 slots, and offers killer 2.5 GHz LAN and Wi-Fi 6. Check out more at the link in the description below, and thank you to ASRock for supporting the channel. Now, we've all seen AMD's slides. A 90% instruction per clock improvement, faster than a 10900K in 1080p gaming, and a great performance uplift across the board too. But that's marketing slides and not exactly the real world, so how well do they actually hold up? Well, you've probably already seen the reviews, so the answer is really well. In my testing with a 5900X, I saw a 20% single-threaded performance improvement, around 15% in multi-threaded, and up to 20% faster in games. Now, the thing is though, I've chosen my wording carefully there, because the up to 20% part in games, well, it kind of varies. Depending on the title, I saw within margin of error to 5, 10, 15 or 20% performance improvements, and so your mileage will definitely vary. Now, a quick note about my testing setup here. I don't have a 3080 or 3090, and the only 3070 I have is the slower non-OC Zotac one, so I'm using the 2080 Ti that I've used for the last year or two for benchmarking, and that I've benchmarked pretty much every CPU I've tested with. Now, that doesn't mean that I can use my old results as a direct comparison, because things like drivers, BIOS versions, game updates change performance, and even just what happens in the game sometimes, that all changes. But it does give me a rough idea of how the new chips kind of sit in comparison. Also, in terms of the BIOS version, I'm using an ASRock B550 Steel Legend with the latest 1.52 BIOS. I'm using the latest NVIDIA driver version, which is, I'm going to cheat, 457.30, and I'm using 16 gigs of 3600 MHz CL16 RAM set with the XMP profile turned on. So that's it. Let's take a look at the numbers. So starting off, as always, with Battlefield 5, testing with an RTX 2080 Ti, DirectX 12 Ultra settings, and DXR turned off, you're looking at a fairly significant performance advantage at 1080p with the newer 5th gen chip. You're looking at going from 155 to 173 with the 5900X, which is a very nice performance uplift. The 1% lows trend with that too, and as you would expect, 1440p and 4K are pretty much within margin of error, so if you're gaming at 1440p or 4K, it doesn't really matter. If you're gaming at 1080p, it can. Now I say that because COD Modern Warfare, again, ultra settings, the XR turned off, is pretty much within margin of error. The 5900X is slightly faster at 1080p, but depending on what you're doing in the game, where you're looking, what map you're on, all that sort of stuff matters a significant amount more than the performance difference that you see here, so I wouldn't take that one too heavily. But Fortnite though, that one is a drastic difference. You're going from 171 FPS average to 208 at 1080p. And in fact, the trend continues here at 1440p. You're looking at 121 with a 3900X, but 142 with a 5900X. And even at 4K, there's a 10 FPS difference there, which is pretty sizable. This is with the DirectX 12 beta feature enabled and epic settings. As for Watchdogs Legion, this is the canned benchmarks. This is, I guess, a lot more repeatable. And what you're seeing here is a 5 FPS improvement at 1080p from the older one to the newer one. And that's pretty repeatable in my testing. And so it is slightly faster, but not by all that much. And as for 1440p and 4K, I literally can't make this up. Both numbers are identical across the board. I ran it 10 times each just to make sure, and yeah, it is. As for productivity, it is a much clearer victory. You're looking at 15 to 20% more performance in both single and multi-threaded tasks, although in some of the more real-world applications like Premiere and Blender, your mileage may vary in terms of how much faster it is, depending on your very specific workload. Things like Gooseberry had a much more significant advantage over Blender's BMW render, and Premiere wasn't, I think it was about 5% faster, but either way, let's take a look at those numbers too. Now, taking a look at Cinebench, I tested with both R20 and R23, and I should mention that these series are referenced to 100% of themselves, so don't compare between, single-threaded and multi-threaded because the numbers, won't make sense. But either way, what you're seeing here is an incredible performance uplift. You're looking at 15% more performance multi-threaded on both, and you're looking at over 20% faster in single-threaded. That is an incredible uplift considering it's still a 12-core CPU. Now, when it comes to the real world, Blender's BMW render shows that it's not always able to perform its magic, as it's only slightly faster there, but in my 10-minute Premiere test render, it showed a decent improvement, and more importantly, in the much longer Gooseberry render, well, it's just worlds apart. That extra performance is enough to enable workstations to be able to render something there and then, rather than, wait overnight. So by all accounts, the 1500X is a better CPU, but there's a catch. The price tag is listed here is £560, which is almost £200 more than you can pay for a brand new 1300X on Amazon, and that's a lot of money. Even the 1300 XT, which is the slightly faster, slightly newer version of the 1300X, is a full £100 cheaper than the 5900, and well, that's a lot of money. Especially comparing to the 1300X, you're looking at, like I said, about £200, which is enough to go from an RTX 3070 to an RTX 3080. And I know which one of those I would rather have for my gaming PC. And if productivity workloads are important enough for you that you would rather have a slower GPU and a faster CPU, then you can spend £40 more and get a brand new 3950X, the 16 core instead, on something like eBay, and you get a lot more productivity performance for that. You also get a relatively similar gaming experience, and so if that is a necessity for you, if you're using these for work, productivity for video editing, for 3D modeling, any sort of CPU-intensive workloads, then it makes more sense to go buy one of those and spend a very small amount more money, or if you're not, save a whole load and get a much better gaming experience. So if you've already got a 1300X, you don't need to upgrade. Let's face it, the 1300X is still a perfectly adequate chip, and especially if you're willing to hold out and keep using it for a few months, if not a year or so, to have the prices drop, then sure, go for an upgrade then when the price difference isn't quite so dramatic. But especially since the AM4 platform is technically end of life now that these 5th generation chips are here, we're not expecting another generation of CPUs to work in these boards. We're expecting AM5, for example, instead. That means that when those chips come out, you can very easily expect these 5th gen chips to come down significantly in price, and so that'll be a very worthwhile upgrade then. Otherwise, if you're building new, then it's a little bit difficult, harder to pick between the two. It's kind of going to be up to you whether paying 30 to 40% more money for 15 to 20% more performance is going to be worth it. And of course, like I said, you don't quite have the same upgrade path. You can obviously upgrade later on to the 16 core variants, but there won't be any, future generations we expect to come on these boards. Either way, like I said, it's going to be up to you, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Personally, I think I would go with a 1300X, or if productivity performance was really important to me, then the 3950 seems like a great option too. But like I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in those comments. Now, if you want to check out the 1500X, of course, pricing varies depending on when and where you're watching this, so I'm going to leave a link to it in the description down below. That's an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see all that good stuff. I'll also leave links to the 3900X and 3900XT if you're interested to see how those compare, again, whenever you watch this, so feel free to check them out. Otherwise, there is a load of other links in the description you can check out, from Patreon for access to our Money Men Discord chat and sponsor-free videos. Otherwise, feel free to check out the sponsor of this video, and feel free to check out the rest of the links. There's merch hoodies, t-shirts like this one, and a load of other cool stuff too, so feel free to check them out. I will leave some more videos over there if you want to keep watching, and that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, do feel free to leave those in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.